All right, welcome back to the foundation. We got David here, the professor. So we're going to be in Matthew chapter 4 here in a minute. The Great Commission has always been something that's really just sticks out to me. Like, go and make disciples. Jesus did that, which in this story here, it's amazing how if you listen and obey what Jesus says, you'll reap some pretty good rewards. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. So, disciples. So this is Jesus' first disciples, right? So Matthew chapter 4, verse 18. One day, as Jesus was walking.
Let's back up over here a minute. Now, we discussed the Samaritan woman at the well, right?
Right.
Who was there besides Jesus? His disciples.
His disciples.
So, what we're doing here, we don't. It may be the first disciples, but chronologically, I think they put them in the wrong place.
Oh,
no. Go ahead and read it. Let's see.
All right. Some fishermen followed Jesus. So Matthew chapter 4, verse 18. One day, Jesus was walking along the shore in the Sea of Galilee. Now remember, Jesus started out in Jerusalem, then he went to Samaria, and then he went to where he'll camp out here for a little bit, anyway, because he traveled to Galilee pretty regularly, right? So,
you're going to do some of the other gospels on this,
right?
Calling disciples. Let's see what they all have to say.
Yeah. So he saw two brothers, Simon, also called Peter and Andrew. Now, John chapter 1, 35. Let's see, starting in verse 35. Again, the next day, after John stood and two of his disciples, and looking upon Jesus as he walked, he said, "Behold, the Lamb of God." And the two disciples heard him speak, and they followed Jesus. So they're already classified as disciples at this point.
But that wasn't Peter and Andrew.
Right. Then Jesus turned and saw them following, and said unto him, "What seek ye?" They said unto him, "Rabbi," which is teacher, translates to be teacher, which is to say, "Where dwellest thou?" He said unto them, "Come and see." They came and saw where he dwelt, and abode with him that day, for it was about the 10th hour. And one of the two which heard John speak and followed him was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first finds his own brother Simon, and said unto him, "We have found the Messiah," which is being interpreted the Christ. So there's the two, Simon or Peter and Andrew. But back to Matthew chapter 4.
Now who's the two disciples that started following here?
Simon and Andrew, or Peter and Andrew.
Right there?
Yes.
They weren't there with John the Baptist, though.
No.
So who's the two that followed Jesus from John the Baptist?
Oh, that was Peter's brother.
See, what I'm looking at is we may the woman at the well, Jesus may not have had all 12 disciples there at that time.
Oh, yeah, no. I don't think so either.
So Peter and Andrew might not have been there.
Right. Right, because that story is right here, after the fact.
Yeah. He must not have had that many disciples
Right.
that went with him then.
Right.
We know, well, at least we know of two. The first two that belonged to John the Baptist started following him.
Right. That's the answer.
So we know of two so far.
Yep. So Jesus saw Simon and Andrew throwing their nets into the water, for they fished for a living, so they were fishermen. So fishing was a profession back in those days.
You had to eat,
Yeah.
sell it, and pay your taxes.
Yeah, that's true. So Jesus called out to them, "Come and follow me, and I will show you how to fish for people, or you'll be fishers of men," as some translations.
I got the New King James version. It says,
Yep. Come and follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. And they left their nets at once and followed him. Now that is remarkable. A little further upshore, he saw two other brothers, James and John, sitting in a boat with their father Zebedee, repairing their nets, and he called to them. They immediately followed him, leaving their boats and their father with a hired man. So,
didn't even get Daddy's permission.
I mean,
I'm outta here.
I'm telling you what. But you know, if you read in John chapter 1, it gives you a little bit more detail on, they already knew each other, basically.
Well, yeah, you're in a common area.
Right.
I mean,
So they already, I'm pretty sure they already became acquaintances, and so they knew who he was, and they probably seen some
they may have
miracles.
They may have heard of the miracle in the water and the wine.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you think.
And they might have even been there.
We've done that one, right?
Yeah, water and wine.
Well, that goes. If this is coming after that, then he didn't. He only had 2 or 3 disciples when he did that.
Right.
He didn't have them all. So, you know, when you see the series Chosen, just about all of them there, and actually they're not.
Right.
And as he walked by the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. Then Jesus said to them, "Follow me, and I will make you become fishers of men." They immediately left their nets and followed him. When he had gone a little further from there, he saw James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, who were in the boat mending their nets, and immediately called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired servants and went after him. He had hired servants.
You know, it's interesting to think about that whenever you...
No wonder the father didn't mind him going. He had
you already had help.
he had help. Yep. If his player don't say that, I'd be so, where you guys going? I can't do this by myself.
Yeah. Now, it's...
Getting the synopsis.
Yeah.
Shows you more.
But just imagine, I mean, what do you think? Maybe the father was like, okay, yeah, whatever. But what about, you know how people talk? So, you know, the hired men had to have something to say about that, right? Hey, your son just went to follow this guy.
That's more work for us.
Yeah.
What do you think I'm paying you for?
Yeah. Luke chapter 5, verse 1. One day Jesus was preaching on the shore of the Sea of Galilee. Great crowds pressed in on him to listen to the word of God. He noticed 2 empty boats in the water's edge, for the fishermen had left them, and they were washing their nets. Stepping into one of the boats, Jesus asked them, "Simon, its owner, to push it out into the water." So he sat in the boat and taught the crowds from there. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Now go out where it is deeper and let down your nets to catch some fish." "Master," Simon replied, "we worked hard all last night and didn't catch a thing. But if you say so, at your word, I will let down the nets." Now in the King James Version it says, "Now when he had left speaking, he said unto Simon, Launch out into the deep and let your nets down for a draught. And Simon answering and said unto him, Master, we have toiled all night and we have caught nothing. Nevertheless, at thy word, I will let down the net." Now, do you know what happens when Peter let down the net? Did you catch that? Jesus said, let down the nets, plural. But Peter said, "At your word, I will let down the net," singular.
Yeah. It's like, since I didn't catch any, I'm only going to let down one.
Yeah. But Jesus said nets, plural. Just an interesting little detail there. Verse 6. And this time their nets were so full of fish that they began to tear. A shout for help brought their partners in the other boat, and soon both boats were filled with fish, and they were on the verge of sinking. That's a lot of fish right there, okay? When Simon Peter realized what had happened, he fell on his knees before Jesus and said, "Oh, Lord, please leave me. I am too much of a sinner to be around you." For he was awestruck by the number of fish they caught, as were the others with him, his partners, James and John. So it's James and John who was with them. The sons of Zebedee were also amazed. Jesus replied to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you'll be fishing for men." And as soon as they landed, they left everything and followed Jesus. Now, we are in a period of time where, all these people are still living under the Old Testament law. Yes? Mm-hmm. So they're still sacrificing. We mentioned in the last session the Passover. Well, what is the Passover? Well, if they were still celebrating the Passover feast, right?
Yeah.
And at this point, was the Passover like the Passover lamb? Do they still have to slaughter the lamb and put the blood on their door? Presently, at this point.
Well, they just did what they did back when they didn't have to put it on the door.
Right.
They just had to go back and do what they did when the angel passed over the house.
Right.
They had to eat unleavened bread, bitter herbs, and they had to cook the lamb that they sacrificed.
Right.
So you had a meal.
True.
What she was doing, it was doing a meal.
Right.
But it was so organic, you would say, that it probably didn't taste too good. Flour with no salt or anything in it. Just a flat piece of bread and bitter herbs.
Yeah. Mark chapter 1, verses 21 through 28.
Ooh, now where we going? We ain't fishing anymore. Well, we ain't fishing for men, we're fishing for unclean spirits.
Right, yep.
Then they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath he entered the synagogue and taught. And they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority and not as the scribes. Now there was a man in their synagogue with an unclean spirit, and he cried out, saying, "Let us alone. Why have we done to? What have we to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." But Jesus rebuked him, saying, "Be quiet and come out of him." And when the unclean spirit had convulsed him and cried out with a loud voice, he came out of him. Then they were all amazed, so that they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? What new doctrine is this? For with authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." And immediately his fame spread throughout all the region around Galilee.
You know, I've always heard of the story of this preacher going overseas, right? And he would see a lot of things that you don't see in America, right?
Yeah.
You know, actual demon possessions and stuff. Well, you know, there was one point where these people said, "Hey, there's a demon possessed guy here." So he goes into this house, and the devil or demon or whatever it was knew that he wasn't a Christian. He said, "Under whose authority do you have?" So they know. Well, this is real stuff, though. It's crazy. It's crazy to see whenever you're reading about anything. Well, that would never happen in the 21st century. Well, maybe not here in America, but if you go overseas, I'm pretty sure it's a regular occurrence because they practice a lot of
Voodoo and witchcraft.
Needless to say, I understand that there's a problem with that here in America.
Well, it's not.
It's not as
You might find more Satan worshipers than you would voodoo or witchcraft.
right. Yeah, that's true. True.
There ain't no need to possess somebody that's already worshiping you.
True.
You got them.
You got them. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So we're going to be in Luke chapter 4:31 through 37. Then Jesus went to Capernaum. Now this is the same story. We're just in the book of Luke. Now Jesus went to Capernaum, a town in Galilee, and taught there in the synagogues every Sabbath day. There too the people were amazed, for he spoke with authority. Once when he was in the synagogue, a man possessed with a demon, an evil spirit, began shouting, "Jesus, go away. Why are you interfering with us? Jesus of Nazareth, have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." And Jesus cut him short. You know, it's interesting, in the Garden of Eden, when God asked Adam and Eve both, "What have you done?" Right? And then they give their answers. Satan, though, "Because you've done this."
Be quiet.
Be quiet. Both times, which is interesting. That, you know, he says, just be quiet. You don't get to talk. You don't get to talk this time.
You didn't raise your hand.
You didn't raise your hand. Yeah.
I didn't call on you.
Yep. Yeah, I called on you to come out.
Yeah.
Come out. Come out of the man, he ordered. At that, the demon threw the man on the floor, and the crowd watched. Then it came out of him without hurting him further. Amazed, people exclaimed, "What authority and power this man's words possess! Even evil spirits and demons and devils obey him." And they flee at his command. The news about Jesus spread through every village in the entire region.
What authority?
What authority?
It says Mark and Luke both associate Jesus' teachings with his authority over evil spirits. Mark, though, goes so far as to identify such actions by Jesus as being themselves a new doctrine. More space in Mark's gospel is devoted to Jesus' miraculous works, and less space to his saying than any of the other gospels. Mark is particularly interested in associating Jesus, the miracle worker, with Jesus, that teaches for Mark what Jesus does is in as much part of the teaching as what he says. Authority.
What authority?
We read, Mark and Luke. Those are the only two that has this scenario.
Yep. And we will be in Matthew chapter 8 next week.
We will go into Peter's home.
Yep. So like, subscribe, and we will see you
after editing.
next week.